I'll be folding my fabric in two for the front of my top and then just draw a straight line at the top. This will serve as my starting point where all my measurements will start from the top I'm working with. The first thing I'll be doing is to get my shoulder length, and to get that, I'll be making use of my back width, that is my shoulder to shoulder measurement divided by 2. Mine is 7 inches, and then come in from the center front of my fabric on the starting line by the number I got, okay, and then mark it out, and then come down by 1 inch from that new point for my shoulder slope. Our shoulders are usually sloping or straight, so that's the essence of the 1 inch. And then just connect that new point to the starting line this way. Next is to get my armhole depth, that is creating a space for my arm to pass through, okay? And to get that, I'll be dividing my bust circumference by 6 and then add up 1.5 inch to the figure I got, and whatever I get, I'll be coming down from the shoulder slope by the figure and then connect that new point in a straight line this way to the side of the fabric, okay? So this line I just drew will be the chest line. I will also remeasure my shoulder length of 7 inches on the chest line so I can get my armhole depth correctly, okay? And then draw a straight line to connect that 2 points together in a straight line this way. So the next thing I'll be doing is to get my armhole length, and to get that, I will need to measure out my bust circumference divided by 4 on my chest line. So mine is 9 inches. After I divided mine, I will just be coming in from the center front on the fabric by the 9 inches I got, okay, and mark it out. Then we measure my armhole depth and just divide it by 2 and mark it out. I'll also be coming in from the new point by 0.5 inch, okay, and then connect my shoulder slope to the 0.5 inch down to the point on my chest line in a curved line with my curve ruler this way. And that's all on the armhole. The next thing I'll be focusing on is to get the neck of my top. My neck width is 3 inches, but I'll be coming in from the center front by the 2.5 inches on the starting line, and I'll be using the remaining 0.5 inch for the folding of my neck, because I'm actually cutting on my fabric, not on a pattern paper. And my neck depth is 5 inches, but I will also come down from the starting line by 4.5 inches. 0.5 inch will be used for the folding of my neck, okay? I'll be connecting the 2 points together in a curved line with my curve ruler this way. And the next thing to do is to take the full length of my top. I'll be placing my tape on the starting line down to the full length plus 1.5 inch for the folding of the hem of my top, and then draw a straight line on the fabric this way. So the next thing to do is to start imputing all my body circumference, that is my body measurement, to the line. On the chest line, I'll be imputing my bust circumference divided by 4. Mine is 9 inches. I will just be coming in from the center front of the fabric by the 9 inches and mark it out, and then also add up 2 inches seam allowance to the top. Allowances are very necessary, even if it's 1 inch, okay? And then on the full length of the top, I'll be making use of my waist circumference divided by 4, okay? And then add up 1 inch for ease. I don't want the top too tight, I just want it a little free. And then add up 2 inches for seam allowance. Also, I will just be connecting the 2 points together in a straight line with my ruler this way, okay? And that's all on the front of my top. I will just be cutting out the front piece, and I'll be doing that with my scissors. So when I get to the armhole, I will be adding up 0.5 inch for the joining allowance and also do same to the shoulder length, okay? I'll just move on to the drafting of the back and the cutting of the back. So I've gone ahead to fold up another fabric in two, making sure that there is a 1.5 inches zipper allowance before I place the front on the fabric. The width of the neck remain the same, but for the back neck depth, I'll be making use of 1.5 inches, but I'll be coming in from the starting line by 1 inch. So 0.5 inch will be used for the joining of the neck, okay? And then connect it to the neck width this way with my cover line. I don't know why my hands were so fast to cut that out, but I was not supposed to cut it out until I'm done drafting, but all the same, it didn't cause any harm to my dress. I'll be coming up from the hem of my top on the zipper part by 0.5 inch and then connect that new point to the side of my top this way, okay? I don't really like the way the back are always longer than the front whenever I'm done sewing. That's why I'm actually removing the 0.5 inch, okay? And then on the armhole, I will just be drawing a straight line from the shoulder slope down to the armhole depth. The reason is because the back of our tops don't have a bust. So coming in by 0.5 inch is not needed, it's not necessary. And then I will just connect it this way in a little curve to meet the front armhole length, and that's practically all on how to draft the back of the top. I'll just be cutting along the line and also cut the center of the back so I can have two pieces, okay? So the next thing to do is to cut the sleeve of my top, and I'll be measuring round of my armhole length, leaving 0.5 inch opening at the top for joining allowance, and I will stop at the bust circumference before the seam allowance. Mine is 8 inches, and then I'll keep that aside to focus on the sleeve of my top. I'll be bringing in another fabric that's long enough to accommodate my sleeve length plus 1.5 inches for allowance, and also wide enough to accommodate my armhole length plus 1 inch or higher. So my fabric is actually folded in 4. That's for my 2 sleeve. I will be coming in from the top of the fabric by 0.5 inch and then draw a straight line this way. And then on the line, I'll be coming in by the inches I got after I measured my armhole length. I will just be drawing a straight line from the knee point to the hem of my sleeve. I will also come down for my sleeve cap length by 3.5 inches. You can get this by dividing your bust circumference by 10. And then I'll just draw a straight line this way. I'll be connecting the end of the new point to the first line this way in a diagonal line. And then measure this new line and divide it by 2 and mark that out. I will then divide the one part of the line I divided by 2 and mark it out. And then also do the same to the other part. Divide it by 2 and mark it out also. So on the first new point, I'll be coming up by 0.5 inch. And then on this second new point, I'll be coming down by 0.5 inch and connect all these points together in a curve line. Just watch what I'm doing, okay? And this is the front of my sleeve. After I'm done doing that, I'll focus on getting the back armhole length for the back. I'll just connect from the first line to the second line in a little curved line this way, and then come out by 1 inch for seam allowance for my sleeve. And then on the hem of my sleeve, I'll be coming in from the center front for my round sleeve divided by 2 plus 1 inch for seam allowance also, and then connect the 2 points together in a line this way, and then cut along the line, leaving 0.5 inch joining allowance at the top of the sleeve. This is for the back of the sleeve, and for the front of the sleeve, I will also be leaving 0.5 inch for joining allowance also. And then I will just come up by 1 inch at the hem of the sleeve and notch the length of the sleeve so that I can know how much I will be using for the hem allowance. I actually want it to reflect on all sides of the sleeve, so I'll just be keeping that aside to focus on the sewing, okay? So I've actually gone ahead to cut out lining for both the front and the back of my top, okay? I'll be using lining for my top. I'll be placing the right sides of my fabric facing me this way, that is the front of my top. And then I'll place the right side of the back of my top directly on the front of my top this way. The size of the top should be equal. I'll be sewing the two together with the seam allowance I added, which is 2 inches. I'll just be coming in from the side of my top with the 2 inches I added for seam allowance all the way through to the end of the fabric. And also come in by the 2 inches on the other side of the fabric. And I'll also do the same thing to the lining of my top. And then I'll just go over to my machine to sew on the lines. So this is it after I was done sewing on the lines. And I also do the same thing to the lining. Next thing I'll be doing is to focus on the shoulder of my top. I'll be joining one of the front shoulder to one of the back shoulder together this way, right sides facing each other, and then sew the both together with 0.5 inch joining allowance. I'll be doing the same thing to the other shoulders and also to my lining shoulders, okay? So this is it after I was done sewing the fabric shoulder and that of the lining. I'll just be concentrating on the neck of my top. I'll be joining the right side of my lining to the right side of my fabric, that is the neck part, and then pin the both of them together. I'll be joining and pinning it from the zipper part to the other zipper part this way, and then go over to my machine to sew the both together, that is the lining and the fabric together with 0.5 inch joining allowance, okay? So this is it after I was done sewing the both of them together. I'll just be notching the allowance so I can be able to turn the neck properly. So after I'm done with the notching, I will just be sewing the 0.5 inch joining allowance to the lining. I'll be coming out a little from the place I joined the neck of my top and then sew on it. This is to enable my lining not to be coming out when I'm done sewing my top, okay? And this is the final result after I was done sewing the allowance to the lining. So the next thing I'll be doing is to attach my zip to my fabric. I'm actually doing an inseam sewing. I'll be placing the right side of my fabric facing me, the zipper part, that is the back of the top, and then come in from the neck of the top to the hem. By the zipper allowance I added while drafting my top. And then when I get to the hem, I will just come up by 1 inch for the hem allowance I added when I was drafting my top and mark it, which means my zip will only stop at this 1 inch point. And I will also do the same thing to the other zipper part. And then after I'm done doing that, I'll be placing one side of my zip this way directly on the line, starting from the point on the hem down to the neck of my top and pin it down. And then I'll just go over to my machine to sew the zip to the fabric. So this is it I was done sewing them together. I will just be unzipping the zip and then bend the zip this way so I can be able to sew the lining to the zip and fabric. And then bring in my lining, place it directly on the fabric this way and pin it down to secure it. Then I will just be going over to my machine to sew the lining to the fabric and zip close to the place I sew my zip before. And I will be doing same thing to the other side of my zip allowance. Okay, and this is the final result after I was done. I will just cut out the excess of the zip and turn it out to show you guys how it's looking. So this is the final result for the zip part. For the zipper part, all sides are equal and it looks so neat. I'll just be moving over to sewing the hem of the top. I will turn the wrong side of the fabric out so that I can be able to sew the hem of the top. And this is it after I was done turning it out. I'll just be going over to my machine to sew the fabric and the lining together with the 1 inch hem allowance I added while drafting, okay? And this is it after I was done sewing them together. I'll just be turning the right sides out to focus on my sleeve. So I'll be bringing back my sleeve and then sew the hem allowance of the sleeve by coming in 0.5 inch twice to eliminate the 1 inch hem allowance I added and sew them together with my machine. And this is it after I was done sewing it. I will just be joining the side of the sleeve this way and then sew it together with the 1 inch joining allowance I added. And this is the final result after I was done sewing the sides together. I will just be bringing in my top to attach the sleeve to the top. I will first of all go over to my machine to sew the armhole of my top together. That is the lining and the fabric together. And I'll be joining the both of them with 0.5 inch joining allowance, okay? And this is it after I was done. I will just be turning the wrong side of my top out, that's the lining side, and then also turn the wrong side of my sleeve out, and then place the most curviest part of the sleeve, that is the front, directly facing the front of the top, and then pin the side of the sleeve to the side of the top this way. And then also pin the center of the sleeve to the shoulder of the sleeve. And then I'll just go over to my machine to join the sleeve to the top through the armhole with 0.5 inch joining allowance. And I will also do the same thing to the other side of the sleeve. Okay. And this is the final result after I was done sewing the both sleeve to the top. I will just turn the right side of the fabric facing me, and that's practically all on how to sew the crop top. So that's all for this tutorial. I hope you found this helpful. Thank you for watching Edible Fashion, where every stitch tells a story. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more sewing tutorials. See you in the next one. Bye.